Welcome, everybody. I'm Love Coach Scott Catamas, and it is a very sacred Sunday show with one of my favorite people. You get to meet Reverend Fajun, also known as Christopher Rial, and he is a really fun, wise man. And we're going to learn all about something he's created called Zen VC. It's kind of a combination of Zen and nonviolent communication, also known as NVC. And it's Reverend Fajun's personal integration of the principles and insights from nonviolent communication as developed by Marshall Rosenberg. And as many of you probably know, I have the good fortune to study with Marshall and to actually travel. Marshall and I took a 3-week road trip from Southern California all the way up to Seattle, Washington together. And I watched him. It was when I was filming a documentary about him. I was able to watch him interact with lots of people. So Marshall was a big influence on both Fajun and myself. And Fajun, and I agree with this, has found that many of the turnoffs, sticky spots, and confusions that some of us might have about compassionate communication or nonviolent communication can be resolved by wisdom from the world's contemplative traditions. Fajun is an ordained priest in the Lohan order of Shan and Vajrayana Buddhism. He's a master of medical Qigong and an authorized Sufi master instructor in Shaolin Kung Fu and internal martial arts. I want to hear about that, internal martial arts. Longtime massage therapy instructor, trained as a love coach under, and is currently head minister for the Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Finally, Fajun has worked for many years to weave together meditative insights, nonviolent martial arts principles, understandings of the human nervous system, and a lot more, bringing it all together into this simple and powerful method for improving the way we connect and love one another. We get to be with this guy. It's very, very cool. And I'm really grateful to have you with us. Thank you, Fajun. And I want to welcome our friends. I see, oh, I love it. Many of our regulars are with us. So welcome Dia, George, Lori, Matthew, Pat, Ruth, Julie, and Connie. Welcome. I'm going to take us into a very brief kind of drop in, just a chance for us to kind of settle in, and then we're going to learn from this wonderful man. So just invite everybody to close their eyes, and let's just start with breath. Breathing at your own pace. And tuning into your body, just checking in with your body. What's going on with your body temple? How well resourced are you? Did you get enough sleep? You had enough water, hydration, food? Are you relaxed? Is there any stress going on in your world? How are your body, the actual physical body? Do you notice any tension, any places that could use some nurturing, some massage? Just taking the time to tune into our beautiful body temples emotionally, physically, and spiritually. What's going on inside of you? And now I'd like to ask us to shift our attention after we've taken inventory of what's going on physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I want you to think of one moment in your life, a time that you had a teacher or you listened to a lecture or a workshop and you learned something significant, something was clicked for you and you applied that to your life and it was good. The one time in your life like that. And once you've chosen that memory, just drop into what it felt like, or what it might have felt like in your body, or how it feels now as you look back at how that moment in time has impacted you, has supported you. I ask us to do this because I want us to have a similar experience today. Bajun has wonderful wisdom that's very applicable to our lives. So let's be open to receive at least one and maybe two or three fantastic nuggets that are perfect for who we are at this time in our evolution, in our soul. Now we can open our eyes and come back into the room, we'll see each other. It's good to see each other. Welcome, everybody. So, you know what memory came up for me, Fajun? Of course, I was thinking about Marshall. And I was remembering when we were taking this infamous 3-week trip together. And of course, I was trying to impress him with how spiritual I was. And after a couple of days, he looked at me and he pointed that finger, he had quite a finger, pointed that finger at me and said, "You know what you are, Scott? You're a fix-it jackal." Pointed out how I was always trying to fix people and make things better. And then underneath that, there was a good intention, but there was still a jackal quality to it, a judgmental quality to it. And we talked about judgment, and he gave me the assignment. He said, "I just want you to notice how many times a day you're judging something." And that might even be judging it in a compliment. "Oh, wow, she's beautiful. Oh, wow, he's nice," but it's still a judgment. So I committed to doing the practice. Oh my God. I could not believe at least 100 judgmental thoughts each day, at least, probably more. Anyway, that was the memory that came up for me right now. And but it really helped me to look at my judgmental thinking. So with that, I want to turn it over to you, and I'm going to ask kind of a leading question, which is, how can we manage our judgmental thoughts? How can we do that?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question, and it's kind of synchronistic to me that you shared that story, because I'm actually taking a break from a qigong retreat that I'm leading this weekend, and my student is one of my advanced students is taking over and gets to teach those guys, so they get that treat. But yesterday we were talking about, in the practice of meditation, I read them this quote from the Tao Te Ching, and it's, it says something like, "Oh, once you know beauty, already you have ugliness, and once there's virtue, that implies sin." And it's talking about this kind of like dualism and the dualities and the judgments that are just kind of part of our everyday existence. And we were talking about how in the path of meditation, what we're finding through research and what a lot of ancient contemplatives have taught us is that we have a skill as humans, a basic intrinsic skill, to foreground or background different aspects of our experience. And what the meditators often want to train us in is how to foreground a sense of presence, a sense of just all embracing, stable kind of okayness or welcomingness. One of my teachers calls it like a hosting presence. And in that, there can be this challenge. I'm remembering from Dr. Rosenberg's book. He brings up the quote from Krishnamurti that says it's something like, one of the highest capacities of a human mind is to be able to observe without offering a judgment or assessment. And it seems like, oh man, that's, for a lot of us, that's just far out in terms of meditation. Or some of us have even tried like kind of spiritually bypassing. We have an uncomfortable judgment, we go, "Oh no, but that's not me, that's the witness." And one of the tools that I'm really finding lately that seems to be borne out by research is that the skill a lot of us are longing for is the capacity to transform judgment, which is it's an aspect of us that's actually trying to help something. What we need is this sort of discriminating wisdom capacity. We need the capacity to make good decisions, to decide what's skillful, what's not skillful. Um, and one of the ways to do that is we can learn to foreground this sense of presence. That it doesn't mean we have to go like, okay, get rid of all your assessments, get rid of all your observations. But instead of the tendency that we often have, which is to kind of land in one and cling in it, to assume our assessment is correct, we can actually have that part of the mind that says, oh, I'm assessing this as this. And we can have a whole other part of the mind that says, I wonder what other perspectives are possible. I wonder where my blind spots are. I wonder what is it that I'm not seeing. And in that way, where this relates, my theme kind of today is kind of the fusion of our communication skills with meditative skills. But where that relates is we actually start to embody this kind of expansive, relaxed openness while not being so open-minded that our brains fall out. We can still have thoughts, we can still make wise decisions, but we're coming from the open-hearted presence that allows for a lot of possibilities, for a lot of curiosity. So maybe to boil it down, that was a lot of words there, but I think my watchword would be curiosity. Is judgment transforms pretty easily in my experience to, if we add curiosity, it turns that poison back more toward medicine.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to acknowledge that Matthew, one of our wonderful participants today, talks about how it's the observer, and he uses the words foreground presence and then overwatching part of our consciousness. So I really, really like that.
Yeah.
And curiosity, yes, 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 yes. It's so important for us to be curious. Quite a while ago, somebody gave me a book, and it was interviews with couples that had been happily married for 40 years or more. And they're kind of sharing their stories. And the common thread was curiosity. After 40 years, they were still curious about each other. As opposed, and that really made a huge impression because as a coach, and as you know, Fajun, I've coached hundreds and hundreds of couples. Early on, I looked to see to what degree are they stuck in this is the way he is and he'll never change, and what degree are they still open-hearted and open-minded, and that curiosity is a really important gauge for that.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Dia writes, life-changing was my shift from the belief that I can never get what I want to I always get what I want. Beautiful, Dia, beautiful. And Matthew continues, curious and compassionate and connected, a healer with a healing balm of non-judgment. Nancy writes, when something is not acceptable, let's use our curiosity and creativity and imagination to create a new, more acceptable solution. So,
Yeah.
everybody for those wonderful comments, and looking forward to hearing more from you.
I really enjoyed that last comment too, because in some of these meditative dialogues, you can get a rhetoric around, oh, acceptable, are we supposed to be accepting of all things, or what if are there lines we should draw that must not be crossed? And this can cause a lot of challenge. One of the best little pivots, and I'll use that word very specifically, I actually draw from the martial art of Aikido. And some of my teachers have taught that if you want to defend yourself most optimally from, someone's attacking you, most of us would think, oh, that's not acceptable to be attacked. But in some of these arts, they say the best way to defend yourself is to be with the situation as it is. If they're attacking you and you go into denial, then you're going to be less optimized to actually be able to deal with that situation. But what the real masters have found is that if you can open to the situation, you can actually take that violent energy, that uncomfortable energy. In this metaphor, we're using like somebody's rushing at you, and you can pivot to it because you're so aware of where it is, where you are, what it is. So that quality of curiosity, it sort of gets right through. Yes, we want it to change, but we're going to change it by embracing it as much as possible as it is, by letting things in closer to our heart and to our experience. That's actually how we can contribute more benefit to them. So I really just enjoy thinking about this. It's been a sticking point for me for many long years in meditation and relationship studies. Acceptable, non-acceptable. And I read a book title long ago. I never found the book, but I thought it said something like how to get the life of your dreams by embracing the life that you have, or something along those lines. And I was like, that really fits it. If we're not accepting things, we can kind of sometimes almost like try to withhold our gratitude to make them change. And then maybe it'll change or maybe it won't, but the whole time we've had to sit there depriving ourselves of joy and gratitude. What if we could embrace things as they are? Maybe we're not grateful yet, but we can try to wake up love or curiosity while we're on the way to what we want them to be. And it turns out it's kind of a false dichotomy. Do you accept things as they are, or do you want to change things? Yes. So yeah, I just really love that conversation.
One of the things that I found is really helpful with this particular thing is discernment versus judgment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Discernment, according to Yogananda, discernment is the last lesson for most master souls. So learning to be discerning is very important, but we can discern without judging it.
Yeah.
We can make choices. We can set boundaries. We can say no without judgment. And so that's been helpful for me.
Well, this has been kind of on my mind. There are a couple I like slogans nowadays when I teach. I imagine you have found some of this as well as a teacher, that we can chat for hours, but if you give a little sticking point, so you can tie it up into a slogan, then we can remember these things. And so lately I've been thinking about that in terms of, as in Dr. Rosenberg's work, he often says, you can play a bunch of different games. You can play sharing from the heart, or you can play who's right. And in this, what I've come to find is that in discernment, where we go to judgment tends to be when we decide to play who's right. And we're actually, this gets into what I'm really interested in lately, is that we decide to grant value or belongingness or humanity to some, and we decide to revoke that in other cases. And this is this rightness. Are we granting, oh, you get belongingness because you agree with me, you don't get humanity because you don't agree with me? And this is this who's right game. And we can do that to ourselves. We can deprive ourselves of compassion. Oh, when I act like this, I get basic dignity. When I don't act like this, I revoke it. So in my inner language that I'm using lately, I try to pivot from who's right, but you don't have to play who's right to play what are the facts. We can play what are the facts without revoking dignity, we can be actively granting belongingness and still being curious about what are the facts. We can also ask, the other game I like to play is, what are my values? And I don't have to, perhaps our values are significantly different, or the expression of our longings, the strategies we use to express our longings. But to have differing values doesn't mean I have to grant or revoke your fundamental belongingness. And so I really like that, because we can have discernment, these types of words that cue us into, oh, we're making wise choices, but belongingness isn't at stake. Rapport isn't at stake. We're gonna prioritize that. And then, okay, I can't hang out with you if you're going to use that strategy, but I'm not going to revoke your humanity about it in a who's right kind of battle. So yeah, very deep stuff.
Of course we're deep. It's you and me, pal.
We went deep quick.
I want to read some of the wonderful things that our people are writing. Dia writes, yes, curiosity with many exclamation points.
Mm.
When I have that, I need not make effort to be patient. That's a really great point that when we're curious, it puts us into that childlike wonder and takes us out of the more judgmental, oh, I can't believe you think that. And actually, let me go to gallery view here. This is a really big one, and I'm heartbroken over the civil war that is taking place in our country right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same for you. I have very dear friends that are total anti-vaxxers. I have very dear friends that believe that it's crazy not to get vaccinated. They're on both sides, they are intelligent, well-meaning, spiritually based people.
Mhm.
And there's this war going on.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. And as a coach, I'm working with couples and families that are breaking up over it, where
Mm.
there is all sorts of really, really, really hard relationship stuff.
Yeah.
And so, what Dia just said really reminded me of that. It's like if we could be curious why the person on the other side has that belief and just bringing it to Marshall Rosenberg wisdom, it's the same common values. Both sides want health, both sides want safety, and both sides want personal freedom of choice. And so, if we can just at least remember that and embrace that and be curious about each other instead of judging each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned in there. Well, yes, I love that you used in because I'm sure you've heard this in these conversations, or at least implied. You mentioned, oh, they think the other one is crazy,
Right.
and that's one of these slogans that I use lately in teaching my course for empathy coaching. Is we never call anyone crazy. Um, and well, what does that mean? Is when we say, "Oh, you're crazy, you're an idiot," the and even the old quote, "When you label me, you negate me." You're an anti-vaxxer. Oh, you're a pro-vaxxer, whatever. Is that we've just lumped the person into someone who we can revoke belonging from. Because this idea of crazy it's basically shorthand for there's no way I could see how you got to that perspective. When we say a word like that, you're crazy, you're an idiot, we're basically signaling I'm unwilling to believe that a human could think that way, that you could be expressing values through the strategy that you're presenting. And we're signaling that I'm going to disregard you, I'm going to other you. You're so other that you can't be inside my circle of curiosity, you can't be. And so what's interesting is that we're so kind of just unconsciously self-destructive, is that we wonder, oh, why are my conversations going so terribly? Why does the other side have such just crap communication skills? But we start most of the time by subtly revoking belonging. We say, oh, well, tell me how and then we do our object manipulation, which is telling the person, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm busy fiddling with this, even though in our words we said something else. Or we say, I think I could see your perspective, except it just sounds crazy to me. That one was kind of sounds crazy, softens it a little, but we signal that I'm going to revoke rapport at the very beginning. And then we wonder why people just raise their volume, so that my whole thing is like, what if we could start with rapport, maybe still make different decisions at the end, but just not put that at stake. We're not putting at stake, oh, I'm willing to try to see how you got there. I will likely never get there myself, but I'm willing to try to see your basic humanity in that. So yeah, it's really hard. And as the I'm I've been revisiting my old textbook, Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence, like one of the ones that started it all in our modern era of this kind of work. And that was where I found out 25 years ago or something, this idea, the amygdala hijack,
Mhm.
that our stress survival center comes online and it basically pulls the empathy centers offline, and uh, the curiosity centers, our capacity. Because when we think, oh, geez, I got to survive, that's kind of the opposite about, I wonder what perspectives are possible. What am I not seeing? We're using our defaults to, how do I get out of danger as quickly as possible? And what we don't realize, the magic of the internet is, we don't realize when we put a little post up there, we're bringing up a survival laden issue, but it's so convenient, that you say one thing and it's just, to you it's offhand, and to the other, like on both sides, it's all about, well, what about the children? What about my grandma? What about, and all these survival level things are coming up. And this is where our brains, our default programming of a Homo sapien brain, goes to, okay, who's my tribe and who's other? That's the first thing I need to feel safe, to survive. I got to figure out who's tribe and who's other. And when I learned this from you, where we're growing is to bring that prefrontal cortex on more often, more consistently. That's where we can grant belongingness from, stay in curiosity. But we're so easily snapped into our tribe versus other, that most of these conversations, we've revoked another person's belongingness and humanity before we even say our first response. We've gotten into that state. And so these tools, to get back to that, like, oh, well, why meditative insights, it's the tools, like you said, to stay in that observer mode, to foreground presence, and just soften our judgment. We don't have to get rid of it, but our whole physiology is there's so much momentum toward snap judgment, toward zero-sum thinking, which is one of my favorite little brain defaults to look at these days. For you to be wrong, I have to be right. For me to be right, you have to be wrong. And just the whole momentum of our evolution goes that way, that we have to work really hard to be able to even take one step back and soften it. So it's a real tough cookie. Fortunately, as you and I know, there are tools and that's why we're on these kind of shows in the morning, is that, like, if you just knew that the other person also wanted freedom, they're not crazy in that they hate freedom. Their strategy looks different than you, or their story about what's going on is different than yours. They're expressing the same values. They got to it from a different angle, but we're all actually expressing that basic humanity. And that's still hidden esoteric knowledge, so it's kind of a bad news, good news situation. It seems that, like, the situation is very dire, but if we had just these little gems of just knowledge of how our human hearts work, there are tools by which we can navigate it. They're not even all that complicated. Big
Thank you.
monologue.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. I am going to read some of the comments that have come in, because there's some good ones. But I want to riff on what you were saying at the beginning of that recent monologue. There's a wonderful thing again from Marshall Rosenberg. It's interesting to see how influenced we both were.
Yeah.
He talks about, when we say idiot, jerk, we're creating an enemy image.
Yeah.
And the analogy, of course, is that when soldiers go to war, they are trained to dehumanize the other person, right? It's not, we're not, off to kill Hans, Jürgen, or Peter. We're off to kill the dirty Nazis, right?
Mm-hmm.
In contemporary times, the people who manage those drones, they're not told that, yeah, you're going to drop a bomb on Abdul and Raisuli and Muhammad. No, you're going to be dropping bombs on the evil terrorists. But just as soldiers have to dehumanize the enemy, in order to kill, we also dehumanize each other and ourselves when we create enemy images. And so, a wonderful practice, if we want to create peace in the world, is eliminate all enemy images. Nobody is an asshole. Nobody is a bitch.
Yeah.
Nobody's an idiot. People make choices that have hurtful consequences, but we don't have to dehumanize, label them in order to set that boundary or to be discerning.
Yeah.
We are all emanations of the one eternal beloved.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to read some comments from our Facebook. I've been working with all of our different Facebook pages. We're on 30 different Facebook groups and pages today.
Wow.
Yeah. Suzanne Lingo writes, I like the acronym I was taught. The acronym is RAIN: recognize, accept, investigate, and nurture. I've never heard the one before. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that feels really good.
We've got some great comments from the people in our Zoom room. Dia writes, third dimension ego-powered existence requires judgment. Let's all go up, dear ones, go up higher frequencies. So yes, it's really true. Nancy writes, curiosity is fun, no effort at all, mindless heartfulness. Matthew writes, yes, letting it in and trying to use it effectively towards our wants, just like in the martial arts that you were speaking of, Aikido. Nancy continues with, kindness is the key. No kindness is killing. And Matthew writes, prejudice and judgment are shortcuts, but not always ineffective. Crossing the busy road is dangerous, and it is an accurate and helpful judgment. Unfortunately, we human animals, I think this issue resides in our physiological side of our existence, similar to what you've just referenced, Rajun, about the reptile brain, having a tendency to apply this kind of threat-based judging to almost everything, including others' points of views and opinions and thoughts and values. Yes. Tia writes, the Hulk's amygdala is what the scientists hijacked in order to have them do their dirty deeds. Well, that's an interesting thought. Nancy writes, Matthew, please say the same thing in user-friendly 5th to 8th grade words. Okay, well, we'll let Matthew tackle that. Dehumanization is not feeling respected. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. There's more, but I just kind of was scanning through there, and I love when there's a wonderful dialogue going in the Zoom room.
Can I share one of my favorite vocabulary words with you?
Absolutely.
I don't know if the audience likes vocabulary words, but I do occasionally. So I'm going to put it in this chat box, which is heuristics. Heuristics. And this basically is a fancy way to say shortcut in your brain. But I just like to say the sound of it, heuristic. And I read this great book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I found the book is slow. But so I don't know, I found his content or his writing style to be sleep inducing, but the content to be fabulous. And basically what he presents is that we've got two systems in our brain. When we're relaxed, when we're at ease, we have a system that can take long processes and puzzle it out and be curious. And maybe I'm wrong. Oh, do I have a confirmation bias? Oh, does correlation, all of this college critical thinking course stuff. But when we are triggered or when we have to do something quickly, we tend to go to the fast thinking system in our brain. And this is where these heuristics are. You could say like built-in defaults or default shortcuts or something. And this is where we get, like I was just mentioning my current fave, the zero-sum fallacy. We have in our brain, like you can see in a band of tribal proto-humans, long thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, how discriminating between self as my tribe and other as the neighbor tribe, like that might have been a survival instinct, right? Because it's been in there for hundreds of thousands of years, it's still where our brain first goes when we get threatened. We have all of this momentum to divide the world up into tribe and other. Oh, for my tribe to thrive, that tribe has to not thrive. And it's called a fallacy because it's not actually true. The best innovations in human history have been where we have learned to overcome, tribe and other, and find a higher order integration. So it's this one is just, it really influences, it's, I hope you don't mind my like intellectual vocabulary word speak about it. That's just what turns me on these days. But in empathy coaching and training empathy in individuals and organizations and stuff, when we learn that the reason it feels so hard and so terrible to kind of shift out of judgment is that we're trying to kind of arrest the tide of what our brains naturally want to do. They get triggered and we just want to go, oh yeah, no, that's okay, you're other. I'll just revoke respect. And then we feel better momentarily because all of our instincts are driving us toward that. If we know that we have those shortcuts and that they were useful at a time, or they are useful in some moments, like crossing the busy street, it can help us soften that judgment against ourselves. We don't have to judge ourselves for being judgmental, which in the Zen tradition, they have this old slogan they say, well, that's about as good as putting another useless head on top of the useless head you've already got. But we can actually go, oh, I'm judgmental because my brain wants safety. All right. And we can lever that into, well, I bet others want safety too. And all of a sudden we're back into curiosity. But if we don't know we've got these shortcuts in our brain, we're actually in just a battle, not only with everyone else that we see, but with our own selves, trying to live up to those compassionate values that we hold. So yeah, just really exciting stuff.
Beautiful. I love how you are describing so many of the important tools that we really need to recognize how to shift from reptile brain to frontal lobe. And one of the things that I love is that biologists and anthropologists have actually proven that as each generation is further removed from trauma, our synapses naturally fire in the frontal lobe quicker and faster. But at the same time, we have to have empathy for those people who didn't grow up in a safe environment, or who have been traumatized, who have to live or are living in a state of hypervigilance. And it's really important for those of us that are blessed to have had peaceful lives, loving parents, being tall white men, right? Mm-hmm. For us to have empathy for those who haven't had those same advantages.
Yeah.
My friend Jonathan Robinson shared with me this incredible study. They asked 1,000 men and 1,000 women the same question. When was the last time you were afraid for your physical safety? The aggregate answer for women was within 3 days. The aggregate answer for men was within the past 5 years.
Yeah.
That is one of the most incredible differences. It points out, and I can't remember the last time I was worried for my physical safety, but for women, it's constant, right? Yeah. So we have to, as we talk about the reptile brain and get abducted by the reptile brain, we also have to have compassion for people that still are in that state of hypervigilance.
Yeah. And that kind of turns on one of my favorite topics, as you mentioned in my bio, of where people get turned off by traditional NVC, right? And I know you and I have mentioned this, and we hear it from clients, or we'll hear it in passing. Oh, you teach empathy? I hope you don't teach that NVC stuff. How rigid or whatever. And okay, I'll make a public confession on the internet. I am a recovering Zen boyfriend. I'm a recovering Zen. I borrowed that language from a teacher, Mariana Kaplan, whose work is really great and very trauma informed. But for me, it's like, that's when your partner comes home, they're having an emotion, they're expressing it to you, and you say, okay, I'm trying to hear you, but I need you to rephrase that in an I statement. you know and it's like this policing of how we're allowed to express ourselves. And there's this really interesting thing between, I do want my partner to use I statements. I don't want to spend a lot of time in a relationship where there's blame, shame, judgment, criticism. I want a relationship full of the 7 adjustments, or is it 12? The many-fold, multifold adjustments. But there's a piece where, as we grow more trauma informed, really, I'm finding this, the work of Dr. Rosenberg's model, and then there are things to be added to that and clarified, but that's supposed to be work on us. That when they're coming and expressing emotions however they are, it's not to say, okay, now that's not a feeling, that's an assessment. You just evaluated me. I'm going to need you. That's where we feel policed. And we're actually like the old fix it jackal. We're using these spiritual, evolved tools and language to actually revoke belonging. We're using it, your emotion triggered my survival thing, and so I'm going to police you to let you know you're not good enough right now. But I'm going to use it, with some spiritual, good guide, Zen boyfriend language. And as we grow more trauma informed, as a world, what we start to find is, one of the principles I learned from you, which is just amazing, is willingness versus capability. That, when we're in certain brain states, I've been in these brain states myself not too long ago. Some of these communication capacities that we would like to ask for just aren't going to be possible. And so our job is to be as compassionate, as empathetic as we can, and really try to bring that compassionate communication from our side, whenever, and we're going to fall down too, but the job is not to police other people's communication. And that actually, as we can see through like cognitive dissonance and these kind of things, that actually usually impacts the trauma more. It doesn't get us what we want, right, I'll just open my heart. Thank you for advising me, oh mighty one. Instead, we police communication and the trauma shuts down more. But when, as we've seen, there are these little miraculous moments when we're on our game, someone comes in dysregulation because they need something, and we actually can do compassionate communication. It can soften up, and we will start getting feelings and needs and I statements because we've created safety, and that's a great goal, I find. The great Buddhist teacher, Master Shantideva, said, he had this famous quote where he said, if the world is covered in thorns, you're not going to be able to coat the whole thing in leather to make your life more comfortable, but you could make yourself a pair of shoes. And so not only can we learn to regulate ourselves, but we actually become nodes of this peace and regulation. And I find that's a practical, I can't do everything about the world, but I can get my stuff squared away as much as possible. And that's where I have the greatest influence. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Fajun, I would love for you to write a book, Fajun's favorite quotes.
Ooh, yeah.
Really, because
That'd be
you
fun.
have like some great quotes that you've memorized, and then you could wax poetic about them. It'd be pretty cool.
That's a good business idea there, buddy.
Yeah,
A hard book to write. Okay.
Yeah. When you told the Zen boyfriend story, it brought back a memory. When I was first really into martial and studying nonviolent communication, I was an NVC boyfriend. And that was, of course, when I was with Suchi, my wife, and who passed away. But this is long before she passed away. And of course, I was so into NVC. So everything was, when you say that, I feel this because it's not meeting my need for it. And when we get into conflict, I'd always go there. And at a certain point, she just said, shut up and hold me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that was it. She didn't need words. She just needed to be held. And that, thank you, Suchi, for that great wisdom.
Mm, mm,
Because so often couples, when they're dysregulated, where they're triggered by each other, try and fix it with words, and they just end up pouring gasoline on.
yeah. Yeah.
And if we can just hold each other, because we are mammals and we need homeostasis. And honestly, I give all my couples now the holding practice. Hold
Mm,
each other every day.
mm, mm,
Every day, just hold each other. Come back. If you've been away from each other for the day, when you come back together, hold each other.
mm,
Don't say too much. Just come into each other's bodies, because our bodies remember love way faster. And it's
mm.
funny how many times people will say, "Oh yeah, while I'm holding my body's go, oh, this feels really, really good." My mind is up, but no, you need to know that what you did is wrong, and the body's like, shut up, and enjoy this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Thanks, body.
yeah, thank you, beautiful bodies.
So stop talking and just hold me. This is the mantra that we learned from Suchi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you, Such.
And it seems like a great mantra for, how I'm framing things of like, okay, foregrounding presence. And, so that's as a meditator, right? When you meditate, you don't try to stop the thoughts. When you do that, you'll notice the thoughts just get noisier because you're invoking tension. Oh, this thought's unacceptable. Oh, there's another one. Oh, drat. Now I'm thinking a lot. And if you are lucky enough to fall into a state of meditation, then the mind will go, I got it. And then you're off to the races again. Instead, what we find, it's nice to have the fMRI kind of brain scan research on this, is that we find if you just foreground presence, you can have a thought or not, and presence is unaffected. It's just this field, like in Carl Rogers therapy, unconditional positive regard. Things rise and they pass and your heart stays open. In relationship, we can do that as well with foregrounding rapport or foregrounding belongingness. And so, how I translate the, stop talking and hold me is that I was really thinking about this. I taught a class on, I always teach the classes where I need to grow the most, because then I'm going to research it and practice and try stuff with Maria and, try stuff out on the internet. My ultimate battleground scares me to death. But what I realized was that often when we get into these debates and these fights, and is that nobody wants to hear your opinion. It seems like we're in a dialogue. We're not in a dialogue. We're actually making bids for connection. And especially when we're in these debates, and so we think, okay, so somebody comes on and they're like, hey, I like a vaccine mandate myself. Seems like a real safe idea. And we think what they want is for us to, give them the actual knowledge. But we're all experienced enough to know that the moment you give them the actual knowledge, they're not grateful. You told them what was true, and then those ungrateful son of a guns, they just say, how dare you? And vice versa, right? I hate mandates. And then we come, well, actually, George Washington, something, something, something. And then we expect them to go like, oh, I never knew that. Thanks so much for enlightening me, you big wise chump. But we're not grateful like that. And it's because we can handle a lot of difference if we understand that belonging and basic respect and humanization, the power we have to grant one another dignity. If we foreground that, everything else can happen and we can actually remain safe in relationship. If dignity is our priority, if that's not at stake. And so when I hear, stop talking and hold me, how I'll apply that mantra is that even while we're talking, the primary thing is we need to be held together. I believe we all long to feel an underlying unity. We all, in every spirituality, and then even those who don't feel that they're spiritual, I think we all long to feel that we're part of something bigger, or that there's some unified field underneath us. And
Mhm.
we can actually do that in our relationships. Even when we disagree, we could prioritize that feeling of unity, that feeling of being held, which is what we're actually looking for underneath all the chit chat, ananda, and the blah blah. So, yeah, shut up and hold me, baby.
I'm glad that hit. Thank you, Suchi, for continuing to. There's lots of little Suchiisms that have worked their way into my coaching, my teaching.
Maybe we should co-write that book. Quotes with Rev Faj and Suchiisms with Scott.
There you go. Maybe we'll do that. I'd like that. All right. So practical. One of the things that I appreciate about you is that you do have this interesting mix of martial arts, physical body wisdom, and obviously very intelligent, very wise, mental intelligence, body centered. So, how do you find that balance between what might be an overactive mind
Mm.
and and your body? What are some of your tricks that maybe you could share with us for that?
Okay. Finding the balance between a very active mind and also I'll hear that as like how to be grounded and centered in my body. That
Yeah.
I think that's what it really comes down to for
Well,
me.
yeah. Okay. So let's take it a step further then. When you get triggered,
Mm.
all right, when you whatever think of whatever triggers you the most,
Okay.
and your mind is, doing its wonderful monkey mind thing,
Yeah.
how do you shift into your body and homeostasis?
Oh, this is just such a fun question and so practical, that I'll take us through a practice and in 1 second, that we can just a quick practice together. But the best idea around this comes from one of my spiritual teachers, and he says, anytime we're in a moment of upset, we actually become very congruent. The body's upset, the mind's upset, the breath and energy body are upset. It's it's not that your body's in bliss and your mind's like, oh, those rascals, they're all out there trying to cheat me. The body's tense and doesn't feel good. The breath is ragged and the mind is going off, right? And this is actually the wisdom of, he says, okay, it's almost tantric yoga, but it's tantrum yoga. So it's the tools of these tantric lineages where we create congruence between body, speech, and mind, body, breath, energy, and mind. When you do that, we're the most powerful. And it's actually one of the most thrilling things for a human being, right? Like we're probably adults here on the internet, like in the moment of orgasm, the mind is open. Oh God. The heart is open. Oh, love. The body's totally open. Oh, bliss. And, it's like, we spend money and time and just for that moment because everything is in alignment. Sleep is so restorative because the mind is blank, the body's at rest, the energy body is settled. So we actually live for these moments of congruence. And unfortunately, in tantrum yoga, we can get addicted to it, or the upset gets its own momentum because it feels powerful, and we mistake power for benefit. We actually, you can find in the research on some of us can get addicted to anger, for example.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons for that is it pumps out a big old dopamine response in your brain, which isn't really a pleasure chemical, but it's a power chemical. And so the body can kind of get addicted to that. Okay. So what my spiritual teacher, the metaphor he uses is he says, upset is like a three-legged stool. If you can knock out any one leg, then the whole thing can come down and you can come back into this regulated state. So what we know from these ancient tantric yogic traditions is that if you can change the mind, you can ultimately change your body or your breath. If you can change your breath, you can ultimately change the body and the mind. If you can change the body, you can ultimately change the breath and the mind. And then all of these in the esoteric traditions, of course, they say that all makes up your energy field and, these deeper layers of being. So my trick is, if I find myself in an upset, well, the first one is I also learned from you and really embodied after Maria studied with you, is I call red light upon myself. And if I'm with my partner who knows that language, I call red light upon both of us. Pardon me, I'm invoking red light. I'll be in the chamber. Please don't talk to me. I'm mean. I didn't get a snack on the right time or something like that. So I call red light because I can notice, oh, whoa, I'm in upset. And then I'm going to pick which leg of the stool is available to me. So if some of us, sometimes the thoughts are running and I don't believe them, right? That's the Zen training. Don't believe your judgments. So sometimes the mind is available. I can do an emptiness meditation. Most often, the soft aminal of our body is the most available, because we could do, okay, so here's a practice we'll do in our body, which is, evidence-based practice. It's the Wonder Woman pose or Superman pose. You stick your hands on your hips. You can do this at home if you want. You puff up your chest, you look up on the 45, you take a deep breath in and smile. And not coming from upset, I'm going, oh, I should have done this before a class. I feel more optimized already. And that's a lot of time where they use this in the research, is like before a meeting, before giving a talk, you do Wonder Woman pose. And because of the way our brains are made, if you make that shape in your body, your brain thinks you're confident. It's really cool. So same thing, our old Taoist practice, and we do it in the Tantric yogas as well, of the inner smile. There's research where I don't have a prop, darn it. Well, I'll use this, where they had people fill out a questionnaire, and some of them had to hold a pencil between their teeth. And the ones who had to hold a pencil between their teeth filled out their questionnaire as if they were a happier person. Because of the way the mirror neurons, the neurons that interpret your facial expressions to try to read emotion, they also read my own facial expression. And if I smile, my brain starts to think I might be happy, just for the shape of my face. So that's one. So there, every day personally, I do my Qigong practice, because otherwise I'm less of a nice person. I'm not as resilient. So in the morning, and you can see, let me stay in camera frame here, but you can see if I'm going like this, it's really hard to feel down and dejected. So if I wake up in the morning and I do my Qigong posture, then all day long, I sort of suspect that I might be really big. I'm a big guy. Yeah, and I've got a nice haircut too. I'm a big, handsome boy. That's an affirmation I saw on the internet from a little kid, and then we do, drawing the bow. And I'm going to suspect all day that perhaps when I set goals, I stay focused on them and I achieve them. And then I unite heaven and earth. And so all day, my mind is going to be less likely to go like, oh, am I connected to something greater than? No, dude, I'm united to heaven and earth. My heart is the child of great mother and great father, man. I am that unity. Okay, so that's the body. Let's do one more practice together.
That was fantastic, by the way. I
Isn't that
love that.
fun?
But yeah, that's great.
I did my Wonder Woman pose, and now
I'm going, oh my God, I got to do that. I've got to do more poses in the morning instead of reaching over for the cell phone.
Power pose. Okay, if you want the book, I'll put it in the chat. For those who like books, this is called Presence, and the author is Amy Cuddy, Cuddy, and she's got a TED Talk too about this. So if you want a 20-minute TED Talk, check out Amy Cuddy, and then the book is Presence, and I like those because I like to. This is evidence-based. Somebody in a white coat did a research on it, so I like that. Okay, the breath, another evidence-based practice, and this I teach all of my empathy coach candidates, meditation clients, as everything, because this breath method can almost instantly regulate your nervous system because it hacks your vagus nerve. If you want to, excuse me, I'm hiccuping a little. If you want to look it up on the internet, look up 2-to-1 ratio breathing. I found an article from Psychology Today, but it takes the fight or flight part of your vagus nerve and tells it to calm down just by changing our breath. So it's a breath ratio where you're going to inhale for let's do a 3 count, because almost everyone can. It's not too slow, not too fast. Goldilocks breath. And then, so if you inhale to 3, then you would exhale to 6. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio on the breath. Inhale half as long, exhale twice as long. And the trick is, I learned this trick later, is that you're breathing slowly, so you're not huffing out all the carbon dioxide. Save that for rebirthing class. Save that when we go to Esalen. It has a different effect on the nervous system. So this one, we don't want to be huffing out all the carbon dioxide. We want to be slowing the breath. You want to try it, kids at home?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try it. I'll guide you through with my count. I have these magic fingers that God gave me to lead these exercises. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Breathing through the nose. We're going to inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhaling through the nose. We're going to exhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was 6. Then inhale. Then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll guide one more. Inhale, 2, 3. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now try a couple with your pace without me counting. Let's do one more cycle of breath like this. And then maybe if people want, put in the chat box, did you notice a change? What kind of change did you notice? That would be fun to know. But what about you, Scott? Did you notice any change with that breath?
Yeah. I'm actually still in it.
Yeah, we didn't do the transition back because it can go deep kind of quick.
Yeah, no, it's so important. Actually, I'm having a lot of sensation in my brain right now. Here, I should let me go back to Scott host tubing and then just go to gallery view.
Yeah, well, I can read some of these comments as well. Just, calming, centering. There's an invitation to exhale fully, let the inhale occur naturally. Yeah, different breath method that also sounds pretty nice. The feeling of coherence. Yeah. So it's a nice way, as I learned from you, and then I'm lately I'm referencing Goleman because I looked up some stuff in that old, dusted off the old emotional intelligence from number. That's an pretty old book now. And as you know, when you call the red light, you're gonna have to go away for a minute, right? It's not the magic of, oh, I'm triggered, and then you can just untrigger yourself. Sometimes saints can do that, but most of us need a minute. And that amygdala hijack tends to take about 20 minutes to wear off, right? And so, when I coach couples, my first thing is always to establish, look, now you have a red, yellow, green light system, and you're both got to agree to that, or this ain't gonna work. So the red light is always, you take at least 20 minutes. But for us, from that thing of like not trying to police others' speech, but really working to regulate our own system, these are the type of hacks that I use, that if I get red lighted and I want to snap myself out of it quicker, or snap myself forward into the frontal brain, I can use 2-1 ratio breathing. And it physically just starts to snap me out of that amygdala hijack. I can take a posture. You don't always want to go straight to a posture of power, because then you might feel really confident about your upset. This is more a counter to like depression and anxiety usually, but you might want to do. I also like the hand on heart mudra from Kristen Neff's self-compassion work. Really emphasizes this. And any of these they're going to take the soft animal of our body and help to switch its state without even trying to have to tell our mind to do something different. The mind will follow the body if we can get it to change its state. And so these are like acts of care. like when we're trying to change the mind, it's kind of, we're violating the Suchi principle. We're talking to ourselves instead of hold me. Right?
Yeah.
But the breath method, the hand on heart, the self-hug mudra, all of these are, you can hold yourself and then the talk will change on
Yeah.
its own, the self-talk.
Ooh, it is so, thank you so much for all the practices of how to come into our body. It's really, really valuable, really valuable. All right, so now you've referenced all these wonderful authors, and how about you? How do people get more Fajun? Where do we go?
Okay, in the chat box, I will put my website.
Okay, and
Wait,
read it to me so I can also pull it up.
yeah, temple-style. I actually own the regular Temple Style, but I forgot to make it link straight to my website, templestyle.com with a hyphen in the middle. And on there, if you want my newsletter, there's a little sign up. There's a little coming attractions.
Hang on, slow down, slow down. Let's do this together. So people
Hey.
watching, beautiful. Wow. God, I knew you guys moved into a new house, but I had no idea that it looked like that. That's incredible.
Yeah, as the world went a little wild, we just decided to go vertical and off into the mountains a bit.
All right. So now, as people go down, where do we register? Where do we?
Yeah, so this is just a bit about, how I think of the system, these three principles, lucid wakefulness, dignified embodiment, and open-hearted compassion. And that's kind of that same idea, how to work with the mind. Oh, well, let's be curious. That's what lucid wakefulness means. Stay curious. Open-hearted compassion. Okay, obviously. Dignified embodiment. That's learning these tools of breath, of, posture. I tend to do that through traditional qigong, traditional yoga postures, but it's any of this, being able to work with the aminal of our body as it is, treating that aminal well. Okay, then I think if you scroll down, there's a sign up somewhere. Oh, there's just me looking pretty at the
Yeah, but I was just with you right there when we went
Yeah,
for our little hike.
yeah,
I recognized that spot.
that was so fun.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
this is just my slogan.
Here we go.
Rise up
All
from the
right.
temple style. Yeah. So there
And
we
look how
go.
easy it is. Boom.
Hey,
I
thank
just
you.
joined the Temple Style community.
Woohoo.
And I want to encourage everybody else to do that. So again, this is temple-style.com. Go to temple-style.com. And that is how you can join this beautiful community and learn all things Fajun.
Yeah. And, I have classes coming up. I'm going to actually teach a Buddhist inspired communication course next month. Maybe if you don't mind, I'll put the link in the chat box for that.
Please do. Please do.
I just gotta go get it. Where'd it go? Here we go.
I will copy it and I'll also put it in on some of our Facebook pages.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's not up on the front page of my website yet because I just got the whole, online page built. But yeah, so I offer these. This one is a paid course. It's just a low cost little 3-session course, but regularly I offer free courses, that just pop on, and then I'm trying to archive all of that on my YouTube so that, a lot of the past courses, just little hour-long talks. And if you like this style of vocabulary words mixed with yogic breath practices, then you can find my YouTube page. As soon as I send out another newsletter, all those links are in there if you signed up on the thing. So I'm not too hard to find. I got a Facebook page for Reverend Fajun. I got a Facebook group called Temple Style, where I mostly post fun jokes and also practices that one can do. Free Qigong videos and jokes is mostly what it is. And yeah, so I try to be less mountain hermit, despite what the picture showed on the website.
Welcome back down from the mountain. We've been missing you and needing you. Sure.
Zen boyfriend returns to the village with healing hands.
Fajun, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. And I know you've got a big retreat going on. I'm sure your protege did a wonderful job leading. But thank you for taking a break and coming with us. And this, of course, will go up in Love Coach Academy page. You'll find the recording on Facebook and the YouTube link. And you can go to the YouTube channel for Global Peace Tribe, and you'll see it there. And of course, Fajun, I'll send you the YouTube link. I'll make it this morning and send it to you sometime this morning or this afternoon.
Beautiful. So fun to hang out with you.
It
I
is.
love talking shop with you. I think we have a lot of similar views, and then we have different views, but really similar values. And so it's just fun. It's easy to foreground rapport and belonging because I think you're doing the same.
Yeah.
And what a nice playground that makes.
Well, thank
So
you.
yeah, thanks for having me
Oh,
with the
my
Global
pleasure.
Peace Tribe. I mean, what could be better than a tribe dedicated to global peace? Come on.
I also want to acknowledge our mentor, Marshall Rosenberg, because he certainly was such a big influence on us both.
Yeah.
And Marshall passed from this world too early. And honestly, in many ways, he was so dedicated to his work and he didn't take good care of his body.
Mm.
I mean, we were all worried about him because he was like constantly eating airport food and
Mm.
traveling and just getting the word out to as many people as he could. And I'm just so grateful for how he's influenced my life, your life. And as a result, we've taken what we learned from him and made it our own in our own unique, wonderful Zen VC ways.
Zen
Uh,
VC.
Zen VC.
Zen boyfriends everywhere attest to its efficacy.
Absolutely. So anyway, thank you, Marshall. Thank you,
Mm.
Suchi.
JJ.
Thank you very much, folks. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And, a wonderful way, if you're watching, whether you're watching the replay, the YouTube version, or you're with us live, share it out. Share this with friends. Let the world know Fajun is out there.
Zen boyfriend down from the mountain.
Absolutely.
Thanks for participating in the chat box too and doing the breath exercise. I tend to feel this, there's not a lot of data on this, but I really feel that we create group energy fields when we practice together. And I've really experienced this in my last retreats, which I've held online primarily, and here as well, when we're doing just over the magic of the Zoom internet, doing breath practices together, I feel them more deeply than I was doing them alone. So it's great to just be in a community of practice, in an intentional space together. And I think it can catapult us. It can give us a little extra momentum. So really grateful. I'm a reverend. I was ordained in a unique lineage that fuses Chinese Chan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, and a big influence from Chinese Taoism. That's kind of a redundant to say Chinese Taoism, but yeah. So Chan and Vajrayana Buddhism with a heavy Taoist influence. Yeah.
I just noticed that there were a lot of comments that came in on Facebook that I missed.
Oh.
So give me a minute. Let's just see if there's any questions or anything that are especially important. So share something wise for a moment while I go back to the comments page because I lost it in
Not
all
all who
enthusiasm.
wander are lost. Or no, wait, that was Tolkien. Let's see, something wise, something. Oh, I better do my Wonder Woman pose. Well, what makes Facebook so hard is that when we are only looking at the face of things, then we think we can just write it down in our book and then we've labeled it and we can throw it away. What if we had heart book? Maybe that's the next
Oh.
answer.
Okay, so Joyce Glasgow, thank you, first of all, Joyce, for always joining us. And thank you for sharing this out with others, which I know you do. And she writes, people also like to gaslight others when they don't want to take responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
Blame on you instead, as if there is something wrong with you to make you doubt yourself and your perceptions of reality. Oh, isn't that sad when that happens?
Yeah.
I read. She loved Tantrum yoga. I laughed out loud when I heard that.
Right? We got to go from
Can I borrow that from you? It's
absolutely
brilliant.
Yeah.
Tantrum yoga is
going to be open source now.
Hysterical.
Yeah.
Joyce said that she's feeling more clear and grounded after your practice.
Woot.
And Christy writes, big clue women had, big clue. Women had unsafe experiences in the past 3 days versus men the past 5 years. Who's just commenting on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Amazing statistic. Just amazing. So, well, thank you,
I do
Faju.
want to maybe one other idea about gaslighting. Do we have time?
Yes. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
I love, the idea bringing in women's experience, as vocalizing a very specific cultural perspective that has often been silenced and minimized. Bringing in ideas like gaslighting. Um, there's a book, another book reference. I didn't read the whole thing, so I can't wholeheartedly recommend it, but I loved the title, which was called Becoming the Narcissist's Nightmare. And now I want to frame that in, I don't think we should be becoming anyone's nightmare. But what I loved about the title was, I think a lot of us who are called to this healing empathy work, we may be in danger of leaning to the permissive side, or leaning to kind of like the codependent, softening our own boundaries side, or have a shadow uh, gaslighter in there. And so lately, one of the things I'm really excited about, not to open up a can of worms before we leave, but that can be fun. Here's a can of worms. Bye. Is to think about what are the tools of strength and boundaries, and actually, I think about it like we used to in the olden days in esoteric schools have like psychic self-defense class, and really looking at like, okay, if we're going to really be open-hearted, then we have to be really good at knowing what does gaslighting look like, because open-heartedness does not mean enabling problematic behavior, harmful behavior. So just fun. That's just a title. Maybe you can look at it and see if it's any good. I don't know yet, but it's Becoming the Narcissist's Nightmare. Becoming the Narcissist's Nightmare. And, it was mostly, I enjoyed it because it was this person's personal experience about how strongly they had to think of it to emerge from kind of the codependent enabler that just allowed themselves to be harmed, calling that love. And they had to get this very resolute stance to get out of that. And, it's a can of worms, because we're in dangerous territory once we start taking resolute stances. There's power. With great power comes great responsibility. There's a quote for us.
Hey, we're on 25 different Facebook pages today, so I've been trying to keep track, and I just found several more comments that are really lovely. Charlotte Frank writes, it's so important to center the need to be conscious in our choices and our relationships while preserving and honoring the humanity and dignity of others.
Yeah.
As an empath, I deeply feel that pain of dividedness. So having strategies for my own wellness and high vibration has been crucial. Then I can radiate the peace outward and apply to others. I'm loving this conversation. Thank you. Charlotte also really liked the RAIN acronym. Charlotte, one of the things she says is we talk about the amygdala hijack in equity training and how to use emotional intelligence and the breath to bring us back. Absolutely. Mo Stevenson writes, refresh with the breath, clear and clean in one moment. Absolutely, Mo. Devika out in Maui writes, loving your guest, Scott. That's you. Mahalo for always organizing such wonderful content on your shows. Robin Delaney writes, you two are amazing. This is the best. I'm trying to find the vocabulary words for useful, helpful information. So thank you, Robin. Elisa Sutter wrote down Heart Book. That's a great idea. I love it. Let's all create Heart Book.
If I could make an app, I'd be rich more spreading the message and both.
Beautiful. And Mary Noonan wants to acknowledge that RAIN came from Tara Brach. And Alyssa Sutter, just strong boundaries. Yes. Yeah. And again, remember, we can set boundaries with compassion. So back when I was teaching live workshops all over the place, and I would I'd set up my little table with all my audio cassettes, and I had 20 audio cassettes, and I recorded on different topics. Boundaries with compassion outsold everything 3-1. So we're all trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
Some of us are really compassionate, but we don't set good boundaries.
Yeah.
And others are great with boundaries, but are not very compassionate about it. And it is an art form, learning how to set boundaries and still remain kind, still
Yeah.
remain compassionate and considerate.
Yeah. It kind of brings back that whole like where we started. We can foreground compassion and still have discernment. We
Mhm.
don't, but it's such an one book. It's a little niche from Joan Halifax Roshi, I believe, called "Living on the Edge" or "Walking on the Edge" or something. She calls edge states, where like so in it's kind of niche because it's kind of Buddhist, but like in cultivating compassion, for example, she's, oh wow, this is great. It can go a really great way, and it can also go to all of these really harmful and self-harming and like lack of boundaries ways. And so very similarly, with boundaries, with power, there's a great chance for gain, great chance for harmonious relationships, beautiful health. And we always need to be very aware, a little bit vigilant, so that we're using our power compassionately, and it seems to be that, this is that in those tantric traditions, what they seem to present, because the iconography is always colorful and sexy, and sometimes there's an axe Ganesha's got, and whoa, this is getting wild. And I think what they were trying to present, at least in our Buddhist traditions, is that we're likely not going to find a way of being that doesn't require vivid presence and full accountability. That's what open-heartedness is not going to mean that we're going to just like, it's going to finally be safe. The safety actually is a radiant quality that we bring to the situation, and so boundaries and judgment and embodiment and all of this stuff, I find it's right in there. It's like we have to learn to live on the edge and when we have that wakeful open heart, when we forward the wakeful open heart, we have the capacity to do that, to integrate these more challenging, difficult, wild world that we find ourselves in.
Lots of people are loving our day are the idea for Heart Book. That's a big hit. And thank you everybody for your comments and for participating. Really appreciate each and every one of you. And most of all, I appreciate you, Fajun. And I look forward to seeing you and Maria. Last week we had Maria, that's Fajun's beloved. And so what a double header, Maria last week and Fajun this week. I love it.
Woo-hoo.
I look forward to seeing you both live in person in Nevada City.
Yes, please.
And let's work on that Heart Book of Suchiisms and Fajun's great quotes.
It's going to be great. I'll go do your practice and embrace Maria right now. Talk less, hug more. And
Exactly. Talk less, hug more. There it is. There's a book also.
hey,
5 books on the
oh,
show.
we're doing great here. Call my business coach and plan the projects.
Absolutely. I agree, Dia. It was definitely a sacred union with all of you. So thank you, everybody. And remember, we can make any moment sacred by choosing to see the divine in all. So let's do that. Have a beautiful day.